Hello, hello, everybody. How you doing today? We are here today talking about Darlie Routier. I don't know, maybe some of you don't know who that is or haven't heard of that case before, but happens that it's been covered on quite a few shows. I mean, I even found Unsolved Mysteries. I mean, how old is Unsolved Mysteries, Allie?
Right.
Right?
I was a kid still, so
Yeah,
it's old.
totally. Yeah, I was just like, oh, wow, an Unsolved Mysteries on it. Wow. Anyway, it's an interesting case, and I'm going to start out by saying one thing about this case, and I'm not really going to be talking too much about whether or not Darlie is innocent or guilty, so much as I'm going to be talking about reasonable doubt. But I will say this, that I don't believe anybody anywhere should ever get the death penalty on circumstantial evidence.
Agreed.
I think that that's an absolute travesty. Uh, I think circumstantial evidence cases are inherently weak by nature. They're weaker than evidence cases where the evidence is really very clear. In this case, the evidence just is very bewildering in a lot of ways. I mean, it just looks like there was a melee there, and it's crazy. But once again, want to say that I think it's absolutely just out of this world that Darlie was given the death penalty on this. But I mean, I get it how people overreact. I get it how people respond to the death of two innocent, 5 and 6 year old kids here, Damon and Devin. Sorry. I mean, these two little boys, I mean, innocent souls. And I get it. I get the response of, oh my God, get the pitchforks, because, these two innocent souls taken the way they were in such a horrible and violent way. And I get that. But she has, as you guys are going to find out, I mean, she has some very convincing defensive wounds on her arms and bruising that is just very, very strange and hard for me to try to explain how she could have done it to herself. I don't know. But anyways, a lot of very convincing looking defensive wounds, particularly ones that are like stab wounds on areas that are just would have been very extremely awkward for her to have tried to, cut herself, or actually it's a stab. Anyways, we'll get a little bit into that a little bit later. But so this case just for me is not convincing. It's the prosecution, their narrative is not very strong. I can actually point one big huge hole in it immediately, based on the fact that they believe that Darlie wanted to get the kids out of the way because they were cramping her lifestyle, essentially, right? So the theory is she kills Devin and Damon, right? And wait a second, though. She didn't get much money from those two folks because they were insured, yes, life insurance, but only for $5,000 each. So there wasn't a big payday from that. Maybe there might have been some financial gain of not having to pay for two children, or whatever. But the fact is there's no big payday from it. There's no anything like that. And the fact is she still has a baby that was upstairs. Okay, so she still had kids. So it doesn't really fit that the prosecution is saying she wanted to get rid of the kids because they were cramping her lifestyle. When she gets rid of the two boys that were getting older and getting old enough to get independent and be able to take care of themselves more and more, and leaves herself with the child that requires the most care, the most intensive care for the longest amount of time. So it's, to me, doesn't the prosecution's logic right there on its face doesn't really fit very well for me. So that's just right on its face. That's something about the case. So let's take a look at what's going on in the chat over here. Oh, we got Perplexed with us.
It looks like she might have changed her opinion. She was kind of on the fence in her video, and now it looks like she thinks guilty. Listening to your friend, I see.
My friend?
No, her. She's her friend that she had on her show.
Oh, the
who thinks guilty.
St. John guy was his name.
Yeah, yeah.
Something St. John.
He said some interesting things. I don't know. You know, I don't doubt that he is very knowledgeable, for sure. But
yeah,
I think there are equally as strong arguments on the other side too. So, you know, I just don't think it's strong enough to execute someone when there is even a possibility that they could be innocent, even if it's a small possibility. You know, and I don't think she's guilty, but I don't have a lot of facts to base it on. It's just, you know, I sort of feel like Laura right now, where I'm saying it's just how I feel. I get this feeling like when I listen to her, I don't feel like that is an act.
I don't.
That 911 call. If you can listen to that and not cry.
Laura's saying she's guilty as fuck. I mean, and I don't usually do that, but guilty AF. So that's what Laura's saying. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'll acknowledge a possibility that she maybe did this, but possibly. As far as I'm concerned, none of it fits with the 911 call that I've listened to, which accounts for most of the time, you know, in which all this happened. I mean, because little Damon, he was still alive when the paramedics got there. Medical examiner determined that his injuries, the type of injuries he sustained, he would have only been able to live for 9 minutes. So the 911 call was 6 minutes, basically. So this just leaves a very small window for this whole staging and cleaning and this and that and whatever and running around. It makes more sense that the running around happened while the 911 call was going on, and she was trying to get like things to help stem the bleeding because she was desperate for the paramedics to show up, which is clear because she's continuously begging the 911 operator to please get the paramedics there. Her babies are dying. She's, you know, in distress. Like, what do I do? What do I do? You know, oh my God, they're dying. They're dying. Please where's the paramedics? Where's the paramedics? And then we find out, this is what kills me about it. And we find out that the one cop, what's his name? I think it was Wanderman or something like that. Wandell, who was I think the first one that came in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, was he the second one? Was he the one knocking at the door? Anyway, there was a cop there already. All right. And then the 911 operator's going, oh, can you go open the door? The officer's at your door or whatever. There was already an officer there. So it's like weird to me, like, is there any communication going on between, you know, the department and this? I mean, because there was already one there. So that was odd to me. But then, you know, I mean, that's the same guy who then, I mean, he's there to be able to witness her, you know, everything that's going on. And it's clear that, you know, she's attending to these kids. She's got these towels. She's doing whatever she can. And that guy is standing there watching all this. And like, basically, I think Darren might be right when he describes this guy. He may have been in shock when he saw it himself. And when the second officer came in, you know, maybe then he kicked into gear. But the whole point is they could have been clearing that place, seeing as one of the children was still alive and moving. They could have been clearing that place, and then the paramedics wouldn't have had to wait an extra 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it was when they got there while they cleared it, which they could have started doing long before they did. And it's like, so you want to try and place some blame here of why Damon is dead. I mean, let's look this square in the face. What's going on with the law enforcement here that was just not really paying attention, you know, thinking about what that kid really needed, which was going to be help and getting that place clear so the paramedics could come in. So
well, yeah, if she's calling on, you know, on the 911 call and saying someone broke into my house and stabbed me and my kids, and the cop comes in and all he's doing immediately is asking her questions, what happened, blah blah blah, instead of clearing the house like you said.
Yeah,
like that is what they should do, because initially it's an intruder who broke in and stabbed them. So go make sure that the house is clear.
That should have been the first priority, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
instead of standing around asking her questions.
Well, yeah. And then the funny thing is, to go back to this guy real quick again, I don't know what Perplexed is saying. I'm sure she's.
She said the 911 call is the main thing that makes her think that she's guilty. Yeah. And I totally disagree. And I wonder if she's heard the unenhanced version of the 911 call with Darren and Waddell in the background talking.
Yeah. I don't believe Waddell. And the reason why is he claims at trial that she wasn't doing anything, that she was just standing back and not doing anything, and that he was repeatedly telling her that she should help the children, she should help her children, she should do something or whatever, which you can clearly hear her begging for on the 911 call and all that stuff. But the funny thing is, when you listen to that 911 call, you don't hear him saying any such thing.
Right.
None of it. You don't hear any of that. The only thing you do hear him say, and here's where we get mention of a rag potentially being put up to her neck. It wasn't her that put the rag to her neck. It was a suggestion from him, because she was in the middle of the 911 call. Her emotions, her everything, her adrenaline was pumping. She was losing blood at a pretty quick rate, because, I mean, no matter what, she had a big stab wound right here on her arm, right here. She had a huge slash across her neck, okay? And she was losing blood, and she's in the middle of the call, and she suddenly goes, "Oh my God, I don't feel good." She's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, or something like that. She actually says that, okay? Because she's suddenly realizing she's injured. She's suddenly realizing she might not make it, like her kids that she's watching die.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's enough to give me pause. I'm not here saying she's absolutely innocent, but I'll tell you what, that 911 call to me is a pretty convincing evidence that it wasn't the way the state says. And I don't know, guys, you know how I am, especially when it comes to making a murder, when it totally looks like it didn't happen the way the state says, I'm automatically wondering, why did that happen? Why did you feel the need to offer a bull narrative, BS narrative, instead of what really happened? You know, so
we should talk about that 911 call a bit.
Yeah.
She's talking about how, you know, if she had just seen her kids, you know, they're killed and all this, they're dead, and she's trying to help them, whatever, why would she be concerned about touching the knife? And that's something that I hear probably the most from the guilty side, which is what she's saying now. And I think that Darren explains that perfectly. I'm not sure if you saw that part of it or not, that interview with him, where he's telling the interviewer that Darlie was pretty sure that she was also going to die, that she was going to bleed to death or die from her wounds. So she was concerned with making sure that whoever did this was caught. And it wasn't Darlie that brought it up that she had touched the knife. It was the 911 operator who told her, "Don't touch it. Don't touch anything." And she said, "I already touched it," and picked it up.
Right.
And of course, you know, Laura, I am the same way. Like, a lot of times, sometimes I think that way too. But then also this part of my brain kicks in where I'm like, true crime stuff, forensic stuff. I know, and I can't say that that would switch off for me because my kids and I were dying. I think that forensic side of me would be very concerned about making sure that the person that did this was caught. And I'm going to tell you everything I know before I die. I don't know. I don't think that necessarily means that she was overly concerned with it. She was concerned with it. But, you know, the promise that she made Darren make her as she was being put into the ambulance was, make sure that you find out who did this and take care of it. That says to me what was on her mind. Her kids are dead. She's probably going to die. Please make sure that you find who did this and make sure they pay for it. I don't blame her.
I'm going to see if I can bring up that call, folks. see if I can do this here.
Power on. Connection successful. Power on. Connection successful.
Which one? Let's put that one. Okay, there we go. Audio is like, well, you know, those of us who are old enough to know what audio was like back in the 80s and 90s will know what I mean. It's not like a digital recording you youngsters are used to nowadays. Let's see what Perplex is saying here. But there are both drips and smears of blood on the sock. The sock, I know, but how does she? The sock is one of the biggest problems with this case for me. I mean, she didn't have time to get that thing down the alley 3 doors down in the midst of all the other things that they're trying to say that she did in that amount of time. So, and plus there's a missing knife. That's my other problem with this case. Missing knife is kind of a big deal for me because where is it?
And there's no evidence of what was the source of the DNA on the sock, or if it was saliva or if it was cells. They don't know that. So it could have been in her mouth. It could have come from her hand being in it, used to cover her hand while she's stabbing the children. But if you think about how horribly they were stabbed, I'm sorry, but a couple of little drops and smears is not going to cut it. That was not used as some sort of a glove or whatever to hold the knife with while the kids were being stabbed. I don't know what that was used for, or what, you know, how that comes into the picture. I don't have any idea, but the timing of it.
Okay, that one went. Sorry.
Yeah, the timing of it is, like he said several times, it's the 911 call is over 5 minutes. If the child could have only lived for up to 9 minutes, she's got less than 3 minutes to, you know, to do all this other staging that you said was done before she stabbed the kids. And I don't believe that, because, you know, there's the broken glass, I think, is on top of the blood. It was something that happened after some blood had been dripped, you know, things like that. And the knife being, you know, whatever all of that was, there just wasn't enough time to get all that done.
I do have a sneaking suspicion that it may have been Darren. Yeah. Kind of, for me, a lot more little things kind of fall into place and click into place when I look at it from that perspective. And he just didn't quite finish the job with her. Thought he did, because he was literally, folks, he was literally that close, or whoever was.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to believe she cut herself in that way and went so deep, making sure she went so deep to be convincing, but making sure she came up 2 millimeters short of hitting that carotid artery. I mean, that's an amazing feat. I'll give her that. Does she have any medical training? Anyway.
I don't think so.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, that's, I mean, it's just, to me, that right there is an amazing thing. I mean, to self-inflict a wound like that and to try to get the really awkward, I think honestly, folks, I have this sneaking suspicion that whoever it was, she was fighting them while she was in her sleep. Like she was dreaming, like she was like, you know, I don't know, fighting an octopus or something, right? But in fact, she was doing was fighting off an attacker while she was like in her sleep or whatever, I think, for a minute. And that might explain how she got stabbed like in an arm or whatever before she got woke up. I don't know. I'm not quite sure, exactly, but those defensive wounds look very convincing to me, and the bruising, and we're going to show you some of that too. But let's go ahead and play some of the call first for you guys.
Ma'am? Who's there? Hang on. Hang on, ma'am. I'm not medical emergency. One Eagle Drive. Ma'am, I'm trying to get an ambulance to you. Hang on a minute. What's going on, ma'am?
My kids, oh my God, my kids, oh my God. She's hysterical. I mean, she's hysterical. Her two boys are bleeding to death.
I need you to calm down and talk
she's
to me.
hysterical. The 911 operator is telling her, you need to calm down and talk to me.
Ma'am, listen to me. I need you to. Oh my God. Can you take the radio clip? Yes. Ma'am.
Especially when she gets to the point where she's like getting kind of pissy with the operator going, where's the ambulance? Why isn't Mike? They're dying. Where is it? And she's like starting to get, she eventually starts to get pissy with the operators.
Calm down, talk to me. What is going on?
Fair point, Deborah.
Ma'am, is there with you? Ma'am, is there anybody in the house besides you and your children? Oh my God. Okay, how many little boys? Is it 2 boys? Listen to me, calm down.
Oh, you mean it's not a walk through the, it's not a tiptoe through the roses right now for her?
Ma'am, they're on the way.
She's not calm? She's not, it's not a leisurely stroll on Sunday through the park for her? This is 911 operator.
I'll be your boy. No. Okay. Oh my God. Oh my God. Calm down, kid. Your name's Darlie? Your last name Darren? There's nobody in your head. You don't know who this is?
My babies are going to die.
There's a knife. Don't press anything. Okay, ma'am, listen. There's a police officer just like those. Your front door unlocked? Okay. Okay, Hey, listen, ma'am.
That's part what she's saying. Oh my God, I don't feel good. She's starting to realize that she may not make it. That she herself is mortally wounded.
Okay, it's all right. It's okay. Hang on. We walked in here and did it, Derek. Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, is the police officer there? Okay, don't talk to him, okay? Yes, that's okay. Go talk to him, though. Okay?
Is that it? All right. So that's 5 minutes and 15 seconds of it. I think there's probably more to it, but so that's the call. And I mean, to me, it's a really big moment when she realizes herself that she is mortally wounded. And she goes, oh my God, I don't feel so good. And she's like, and then you hear the officer behind her, that's Waddell, saying, let's get a rag or whatever, because he wants to like try to compress the wound on her neck or maybe the one on her arm. Basically, he's thinking, he wants to start, kind of some first aid, because, he realizes that when she did that, she probably was, about to topple. Her blood pressure was probably, skyrocketing downward with the loss of blood, and she was panicked, freaked out. Her heart rate was probably way up because of what she was dealing with, and you can clearly hear that she's clearly panicked. And so that's what I hear going on there. And it's Waddell is the one that suggests a rag, and then when he goes to trial, he testifies that he was telling her she needs to take care of her kids, that she needs to do something for them. She needs to do something for them. And that all she would do was sit there with a rag held up to her neck or whatever. And that all she would cared about was herself. You hear that you just listened to, right? Yeah. Hey, Allie. And you heard that. I did not hear him saying any such thing. The only thing I heard was him suggesting a rag for her when he realized she was about to fall over from her injuries and her elevated, state of distress. So, I mean, for him to have flipped around and testified to the opposite of what actually is, what's actually happening there on the the tape. Let me turn off there you go. And to go against what was clearly happening there. I mean, that I don't believe that Waddell's testimony. I don't believe what he says about what happened, because the thing is that with this case, we don't get in a lot of cases the most of a great portion of the actual time in question of the immediate 9 minutes following this crime. We have 5 minutes, over 5 minutes of it, almost 6 minutes of it, if you get the full one. So that's a large chunk of the pertinent time period in which this crime took place. And me personally, what I hear going on in that time period is very convincing to me that she was very distressed at what had happened. And if that wasn't enough to convince me, or at least get me wondering, I should say, then a look at the wounds that she received was further cause to get me wondering. Any thoughts, Callie?
Yeah.
Now that we've finished the call, any thoughts about the call before we go to the pictures?
Yeah, lots of thoughts about the call. I mentioned in chat, she's at one point she's screaming for Karen, the nurse across the street. You know, if you've just tried to murder your children and stage this scene, why are you screaming for a nurse? Why are you on 911 call, begging and pleading for them to get help there? She doesn't know what to do, and she's doing the best she can to administer aid to the one of the children that she was taking care of while Darren took care of the other. You know, she's not medically trained, so she's doing the best she can. She's running back and forth, getting rags and bringing rags to Darren, bringing rags to the other child. And you can hear her sitting there talking to him. Hold on, baby. Hold on, honey. You know, and I'm going to cry. Oh my God. The 911 operator is like, talk to me. Tell me what's going on. And she's like, I'm talking to my baby. He's dying. You know,
right.
My babies are dying. You know, she's like, I'm talking to them. That's not what someone who tries to murder their children does. I'm not going to sit there and talk to them and, you know, plead for them to hold on and try, you know.
After I just got done stabbing them and stuff. I mean, that would be, yeah.
Right. I'm not going to try to get them help.
Yeah.
And hope that they can be saved and say, Mommy stabbed me, you know?
Yeah.
No, sorry. She's trying everything she can to get them help and get it there as quickly as possible.
Yep. She did everything right. The cops, like I said, the cops in this case were really slow in the uptake by not clearing that house immediately upon setting foot on the premises. I've been checking out a lot of things today, Laura. I have not made any decision. Sorry, perplexed. I have not made any decision yet. Calm your jets, relax. But yeah, I have an opinion about this case. I don't feel reasonable doubt is met.
Same.
In fact, one of the jurors actually has flip-flopped completely and says if he had seen what was the footage? Oh, if he had seen all of the everything that I'm going to show you in a minute, but if he had seen all the pictures of her injuries at the time, he would not have voted guilty. He would have held out.
Right. Because they're here, the jury's hearing, okay, so she was standing around putting, you know, the towel to herself. She's refusing to help her children. She seems uninterested, and when she goes to the hospital, all she can talk about is the knife and getting the prints, and then she's unemotional and uncaring while she's in the hospital, when that is just there's another complete lie. The nurse's notes are just one after the other of how she's crying, she's hysterical, she is very emotional, she needs some sort of support, blah blah blah, on how upset she is during her hospital stay. So they're hearing lie after lie from all these people, and that's actually something that I wanted to do, was go into the myths versus the facts and, you know, talk about that. But I'm not quite ready to do that just yet. But right. I do plan to try to do something like that. I've some of those are going to be on the list.
Yeah. And this was designed to give, you know, the Wrecking Crew and my subscribers and stuff, you know, a little bit of a taste of this case, because we're intending to go a little bit deeper. So we wanted to kind of start to briefly introduce it today, the basics of it, you know, for people to get their head around some of the basics of it and that sort of thing. So that's why we were addressing it today. So that's what we're hoping to do. But yeah, like Allie's going to be, you know, she's got a couple things in the works here and, you know, the ball's in the air. And hopefully, you know, she's going to have something cool come through pretty soon. And we'll go ahead and do a much deeper dive on this and talk about it in more detail. So.
Hey, Kim asked a good question.
Let's see here, Kim. Sorry, I'm.
Do you want me to read it?
Go ahead.
She said, did someone say on the tape that the husband said something about being robbed and she said nothing was taken? Doesn't that seem kind of odd? I'm not sure if I heard that right. And I don't know for a fact if it was Darren or if it was Officer Waddell, who suggested maybe this was a robbery. But either way, she does yell at whoever that is and say nothing was taken. You know, basically, no, it wasn't a robbery. Somebody just broke into the house and stabbed us. That's what it was. No robbery. You know, obviously there was no robbery. Her jewelry is sitting right there on the kitchen counter. I mean, nothing was taken. So I think she was just trying to squash that right out. No, this wasn't a robbery. But I think it is also interesting that, you know, someone brought that up because of what Darren did. Do you want to talk about that?
What Darren, you know, well, I can talk about some things about Darren here. Darren has some problems. I mean, actually, something I was just watching just told me he had way more problems. But I'm going to start out with the fact that there's evidence that he was taking part in trying to, you know, commit like insurance fraud, and he was trying to enlist people to help him do this and that sort of thing. So it's very likely that he was making enemies of people who were, you know, finding themselves victims of this type of stuff from him or whatever. Or, you know, I would say that in the type of debt he was in, he was probably, you know, he had a lot of people pissed off at him in that sense too. So I don't know if because I don't know, I'm really starting to kind of lean towards the fact that when I look at, if I plug him in as the killer, it really makes a lot of things make sense. If he intended for her to die, and to, you know, to, you know, I don't know. For me, it just makes sense that it would have made his financial problems go away, getting her life insurance. But the problem is he would have been suspect number one. So the whole situation is a conundrum, really. It goes round and round and round. But
that's exactly what he said too. If she would have died, I would have been their suspect.
Yeah.
It would have been on me.
So I don't know, but it would have helped him out financially. And I saw Travis just joined us. I'm gonna get to you in a second, Travis. But it would have helped him financially in that sense, you know, at least in the short term, possibly even to raise a defense that he thought would help him beat it or anything like that. But they did a lie detector on him after this, and they went right at him, and he failed. And he claimed that it was administered improperly. I just got done watching a show where some, you know, very seasoned investigators and stuff actually watched the tape of the polygraph and said they didn't do anything. They didn't try to badger him or cajole him. They didn't do anything. They just asked questions, and you just see the guy quietly just marking the thing whenever he, you know, saw whatever. And it was like, they're all like, that looked like a perfect polygraph. You know, this thing I was watching, they were basically saying that looks perfect. And so it was like, and it basically came out to where it basically, the questions were implying that he had killed them and stuff. And that he had done the injuries on, you know, Darlie or whatever. And he was denying it, but he failed. And this, for some reason, didn't end up becoming a big deal. I don't know how that is. But that's what I was just watching. And I saw him. He's sitting there in the chair. You can see him in the video. He clearly took this polygraph. He's sitting there in the chair. And, yeah, it's crazy. So
yeah, what I was going to say about Darren, or see if you wanted to talk about it, was that Travis also brought it up. I think he picked up what I was trying to lay down there. That the father-in-law came forward and said that Darren had tried to get someone to rob his house.
Right. Stage of robbery.
Yeah. So for insurance money, just steal everything from their house and go and store it somewhere. And then he would collect the insurance money and pay them, and he would bring all the furniture back and whatever they stole. So that's something that's a possibility of what could have happened. You know, he said Darren did admit to doing this, like on one of these shows. I think the one that I sent you, he did admit to doing it. And he said that his intention was not to have anyone hurt. It was just to rob the house for insurance. And he had done it before with his Jaguar. And when Darlie found out about this while she was in prison, she said that she will no longer be with him if she's out of prison. And of course, eventually they were divorced. But because she found out, she didn't know about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know? So that tells me she's not involved at all. This is possibly something that Darren set up that went wrong.
That's, it's like I said, that's the thing that plugs in and really makes a lot of things start to make more sense for me, is if I plug him in whether he was the one putting his hand to it or not. It's when I plug him in as the driving force behind this. Did it get out of hand and go way beyond what he intended or anything? You know, I think maybe it did, but really, to me, it kind of makes a fair amount of more sense for me that he could see potentially making his problems go away through some insurance thing, but it just got out of hand. That's, I think, a distinct possibility. So let's see what else we got here. Did we lose Travis already? That is from Texas Monthly article. Darren, his father-in-law said he asked who he could get to stage a robbery. So there you go. Darren's father-in-law said that, according to Trav. See, Allie Apperson, why did she not know what happened? I think, well, like I said, I think it's because she was sleeping.
Yeah, like we kind of tossed around a couple of just ideas that came out. Like I had one that came off the top of my head. I don't know. It's a good question, but you know, I thought maybe it's possible that she was attacked while she was sleeping, but that she didn't ever completely wake up. And then, you know, if someone did use that sock to cover her nose and mouth to try to suffocate her or whatever, and then left thinking that they had killed her because she passed out or something, she would come to pretty quickly. And I know that for a fact, unfortunately. So it's possible that that's, you know, also where that blood came from. You know, maybe she was stabbed but all those bruises, I cannot get over the bruises. How, like, what kind of scenario in my head would even cause that damage? You know, they're really ridiculous. I've never seen bruises like that in my life.
Yeah, those bruises were wild. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and look at some pictures of Darlie, folks. All right. I'm going to trust you to monitor the chat, Allie, while I run the pictures here. So. This is from the website that Denise Rainey put the link up for a little earlier. It's called, it's basically darliefacts.com. Okay, so you guys can get an idea of what these wounds were like. That is the wound on her neck. All right, and it went so deep that it was literally, I mean, just so close to just nicking that carotid artery. And had that happened, she surely would have died. Yeah. And so if she did that to herself and missed by that much, I mean, that's an amazing thing. Mm-hmm. But then the weird thing is that there's the other spot down there lower that looks like maybe a stab or something. I mean, this is a lot of self-inflicted wounds, you know, because these aren't the only two. Anything before we move on to another one?
Well, like I was telling you earlier, I think when I look at that, I think, you know, look at somebody who is either leaning over the top of her and they're just reaching down and kind of slicing across her neck and in an angle, at an angle.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't go straight across. I mean, that would be kind of awkward, but going kind of down at an angle, thinking, you know, quickly thinking you just, all right, I killed her. I just cut her throat. I killed her. And then leaving. I could see that not self-inflicted, because that would have been, she would have had to use her left hand to do that. And, you know, people talk about the hesitation marks that they think they see here. And I know that in some of the, at least some of the testimony that I've read, none of the doctors have testified that this was self-inflicted. They think they've only said nothing. They've said they don't believe that it's self-inflicted, or that it's possible. That is the most that anyone has said, was that it was possible.
Yeah.
So that is one of those myths that is not a fact. One of the experts, the doctors, testified that they're not usually so deep. They're more closer to the surface if there's hesitation and there's some crisscrossing, and none of that's present. This goes deep enough to, like you said, get right on the carotid artery sheath, which, you know, you're dead. I mean, she probably could not have been saved if
it was actually nicking. It actually did, like, it was nicking the outer membrane of her carotid artery. I mean, it was literally nicking that membrane. It was literally 2 millimeters from actually piercing through it and allowing that blood, which is under very high pressure, coming straight from your heart and just spurting right out of her neck. I mean, that's how close she was. I mean, not to be so, you know, grim and graphic about it, but that's the reality of it. That's how close she was. Teeny, tiny, tiny little bit.
You know, she had lost a lot of blood, and was starting to get woozy right at the end of the 911 call. So I'm sure by the time she's put into the ambulance, she is thinking, I'm dying. I'm going to die. You know, because believe me, if anybody's ever been in that situation, when you get to the point where you're about to pass out, you don't think you're going to wake up. You know, it's a terrifying feeling, and you would be afraid. I might not wake up. So Darren, make sure you take care of this. Yeah, I don't think anything is suspicious about that at all.
And then how about this one, folks? How hard would it be to stab yourself in this way on this part of your arm? And this is her right arm, and she's right-handed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Meaning she would have had to use her least dominant arm and hand to try to stab herself in this very awkward place on her other arm. So that's another thing that's very odd about this to me. I mean, yeah, it really is. It's just very strange to me. It's why I think these defensive wounds look convincing to me. Let's take another look at that, a little closer up. I mean, you know,
that's such a strange angle. Like, how do you twist your arm and your other arm and just, you know, stab yourself? So, like, try to do that right now. Seriously.
I know, that's
with
what I mean.
A big kitchen knife, a really big kitchen knife. Think about how big that is, and then how you'd angle your arms to make that. It's just really awkward. You wouldn't think that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to self-inflict some wounds, I might stab the top side of it or something, you know, somewhere easy.
Let's show some of her bruising.
Like, look at that's solid. That is.
Look at that.
Under her armpit. It is ridiculous. I've never seen anything
it's just
like
that. I mean, it looks like she was fighting. That's truly, I mean, whether she realizes it, whether it was in her sleep or not, you know, I don't know if she had been drinking heavily or something. I don't know. But
I don't believe she was.
Yeah, I don't know how much she might have been, but I think she was in a dream state and was somehow, interacting with reality, but not aware of it.
Yeah, look, if she was to bend her arm
Let's look at another one.
Like fold her arm completely in half.
Get the little marks.
It just looks to me like somebody was either sitting with their knee or something, or standing on it in that same area, so it stretched all the way down if she extends it. But if it's bent all the way in half and somebody's just sitting or standing on that, that's what that looks like to me. I don't know, but
I mean, it's just, I don't know, this bruising is pretty wild. Let's see here, what else?
Look at the on her hand. She's like, she grabbed the blade of the knife with her hand.
Oh, yeah. Or
And
tried,
of course,
or was deflecting it with her, yeah.
Her fingers wrapped around, and you know how when you wrap them around, it levels out. So she definitely wrapped her hand around a blade.
Or tried or deflected it somehow, maybe with her hands or something. And yeah.
These are defensive wounds. I don't know how they say they're not.
Yeah, I mean, this is wild. If she, I mean, this is just some wild, wild stuff for her to have self-inflicted. The fact that they expected all of the, for me to believe that she self-inflicted all of this bruising, the awkward stab on the arm and on her dominant arm, in a very awkward spot, you know, and yeah, it's just very, and then, I mean, to have self-inflicted in her neck in such a way, it's just like amazing. It's just amazing if the prosecution's, you know, theory were to be believed.
I've heard, you know, why wasn't she punched or attacked in her face? The guilty people think, well, she didn't want to damage her face, her looks, you know, because she's very vain and all of this. Yeah. But I don't think it looks like she was beaten. You know what I mean? I think it looks more like on that arm, like she was being held down, maybe to be raped. I believe she was just sitting, you know, in her t-shirt.
Her panties were missing.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Prosecution believes that she dropped them in like the hamper during her little furious 2-minute little, you know, little, you know, spree where she went and dropped the sock 3 houses down in the alley and everything else that she did. Yeah, that's one thing, is her panties were missing, but there was no evidence of a sexual assault. There was, oh, you do remind me of one thing I heard. One deputy saying something about Darren making the comment of, oh, I could understand, you know, if a burglar came in and found, you know, a big breasted, you know, blah, 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 whatever, like laying on the couch, that they might be tempted to do something or whatever. And it's like,
right.
What a really odd thing to say, dude, when your 2 eldest boys have just been murdered hideously. You know, it's just like, you know, what is up with that? and there was something I was watching where there was one of the cops was saying that as they were going through the crime scene, they heard him make odd statements, and that was one of them.
I can't say I wouldn't have had that thought.
Dude.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. If you saw her, you know, some of these people who've never heard of this or seen her, they don't know what she normally looked like. She didn't look like that. She was very well put together and big boobs and bleach blonde hair, very pretty, you know, very young, nice looking lady.
Too made up in my opinion, but I'm sure a lot of people would like it.
Yeah, well, in the 80s it wasn't. It was
90s.
Well, yeah,
she was
80s,
probably
90s.
An 80s child though.
Yeah, for sure. She was a young lady, but yeah, somebody said they were living in DFW at the time. I was too. I think I lived in Grand Prairie at the time. So it was fairly close. So this was all over the news, constantly being shown on TV. And the silly string thing, are we going to get into that?
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that too. Let's see what else we got here. So some more. Looks like some more cut, maybe. No, I don't think so. But it's just a lot of bruising. It's just, yeah. hard to believe she's self-inflicted. All that. One more look at that. I mean, that's on her right arm. You guys can see that that's on an awkward side, right? This is on the, I mean, it's on this side. It's, I mean, you know, that's what's weird about it. It's, I don't know. It looks like a defensive wound. Whether she realized she was fighting in her sleep or not, it looks like a defensive wound.
Yep. I was one of those Texas girls with big hair back then. For sure. And it is very much like that.
Yeah. So this is
Sorry,
her. Looks like they haven't. Yeah. I mean, those are pretty rough. Yeah, it's just hard to believe she would have self-inflicted all that. So you guys can understand that's what we're talking about. Stop that. Hello, I'm back. And, all right, let's look back at the chat here. Hopefully, Allie's been taking care of you guys. All right, let's see what we got. Uh-oh. Did I see Captain Crunch there? No. All right. Bruising is not necessarily trauma. There's blood in the tissues. Ryan Polachek loves your mind, Allie.
Thank you.
See, big breast implants and dyed hair. McTown jurors. Let's see here. See, thanks. No rush. You can do it once you're back at your computer. It was a compromised crime scene by EMTs, cops, etc. Yeah, I did see something about the way they were collecting the evidence was a little bit off.
Yeah, they're stepping all in the blood and putting their own footprints in it and stuff. And then there is that fingerprint, that one bloody fingerprint that doesn't, with DNA in it, that doesn't belong to anyone in the house. So
Yeah.
I would imagine by now it's been tested and compared to all the police and everyone who was there. But there it is. I mean,
yeah,
it's not matched to anybody. As far as I know, I would imagine it was compared to everyone, and it was not matched to anyone. Definitely no one in the house. So who the hell is that? That's blood. It's a bloody fingerprint, plain as day. Very good one, looks like. So there's no intruder. No, there was. I'm sure of it. In fact, maybe two.
The fact that there's a missing knife for me is a problem. You know, that leads me to believe there could be another person, you know, that we don't know or didn't see or she didn't see. She claims she saw one person. You know, but yeah, the fact that there was a different knife used on Devin, the eldest son, there was a different knife used on him than the knife that was used against Darlie and, pardon me, sorry folks, Darlie and Damon. That knife, you know, was not used on Devin, the eldest son. It was a different knife, and the reason why, and another thing, they know that it must have been a dual-sided knife that came to a point at the end, because it went in, and the way that it opened up the wound, they couldn't even get the wound to like close afterward, and they kind of know what the end of it looked like, because at one point it went all the way through and embedded itself into the floor underneath Devin at one point, and so yeah, it's a different knife, and so that's the fact that that's not around. There's two knives involved, multiple people, you know, had to know there was people upstairs, and that it could get even, you know, whoever was coming in to do this had to realize that it could possibly become more complicated, because there could be more people upstairs. Could be, I don't know. I mean, it could be robbers came in to do something else and panicked when they saw 3 people in the living room. I don't know. It's a really strange situation, but like I said, those are pretty convincing defensive wounds. And the other proof that I see from the prosecution that's supposedly supposed to convince me, like the silly string stuff, like Allie was just talking about, doesn't really convince me of anything. To be perfectly honest, any like jubilance or happiness that I see from Darlie in that video seems forced. It seems forced to kind of try to simulate the festivities of a child's birthday party, but it doesn't seem like it's coming out really naturally, like that's the way she feels in her heart. It just feels like she's maybe putting on a show for the kids that are coming by to drop the presents on his grave, and that sort of thing, because they were all getting ready for this big birthday party. He was totally excited about it. Devin was completely excited about his 7th birthday party they had been planning. Him and his brother loved silly string. It was one of their favorite things. And so that's what they were doing there, because they were just trying to create that atmosphere. And like I said, people keep saying she looked happy and this and that and whatever. I don't think so. I see her trying to look happy, but to me it looks forced. It doesn't look natural.
It's just the fact that she, on the 911 tape, when the dispatch officer asked her, how old are your children? And she's, says one is 7. Obviously he was not 7 yet. So you could tell that was on everyone's mind, that this was a big deal. Everybody was looking forward to this birthday party and him being 7. And so you don't just go and kill a child just before their birthday and still think of them as aging to 7 in the next few days. But, her sister, I believe, still feels responsible for the silly string thing, because she's the one that bought the silly string and brought it to the grave for the children that were coming that didn't understand what had happened. They were coming to a party, and that's something that he liked to do. So I think it was forced, like you said. It was,
yeah.
Not,
I think she was putting on a show for everybody, trying to create a facade for the kids coming, of like come and show respect for Damon and Devin, and everything. Like, they didn't want to just be sitting there like all crying and whatever and scare the kids away,
right?
And so I can totally, and like I said, when I look at her, it just doesn't look like it's real, jubilance and happiness. It looks like kind of faked, forced happiness for the benefit or the sake of others. That's really what it comes off like to me personally. So yeah. Let's see what's going on.
And then, there's something like 14 hours of surveillance that the police did at the gravesite, something like that, and parts of that have been released. So what was shown all over the news, and I can tell you for sure because I saw it a million times, was the silly string part. Mm-hmm. That was when the news people came up, and it was sort of a show. This was something that was going to go on the news. Like, she was aware of that, and she's obviously not thinking I look guilty if I do something like this. She's thinking about, this is my child's birthday party, even though he's in a grave. This is still his birthday party, and we're going to have fun, and then we're doing this for him. They don't obviously have the footage of what happened before the memorial, the crying, the hugging, and all of that. That was brought out later, and I guess it wasn't shown at the trial. See, I don't know that for a fact, but I don't believe it was shown at the trial, because the officers that were asked about it or were involved in that pleaded the fifth so that they wouldn't incriminate themselves, because that was illegal what they'd done. Wiretapping the gravesite, they did it illegally. So the judge advised them to plead the fifth. So I don't think that was introduced at the trial. I don't think the jury saw that. I know we didn't see it on the news. Right. So all you think is, well, they're just out there having a big party, when that's not really what happened.
Right. No, I don't think it was either. Like I said, I mean, I look at her face when she's, I think she's trying to do it. I think she's making a very valiant effort because she loves her son and it was supposed to be his birthday party. So I think she's doing all that, but it doesn't look it just doesn't look like that's the way she's feeling in her heart. It looks to me like she's still struggling with the pain and anguish of what she's going through as a mother, losing her two eldest boys the way she did. So I don't know. That's the way it comes out to me. It doesn't come off as convincing joy or jubilance.
Yeah. So I mean, if that's what you see, of course you get the wrong impression from that. And I believe the jury watched it like 8 times or something. So they were pretty interested in it, and it did play a factor. And I think that one juror that you talked about earlier said that if he would have seen that, he would have, that and the pictures, it would have made a difference in how he voted. But they weren't. Some of these things they weren't shown.
The convincing nature of those defensive wounds is a big problem for me. It's a big problem for me, and the missing weapon, that's another problem for me. It tells me there's more to this story, and it doesn't. Well, it tells me this. Even if it is Darlie, it tells me there's somebody else. In my reasoning, I reason there's somebody else wielding that other knife that we don't know about, got away and took the knife with them. So I don't know, but that's my thoughts, because it was clearly a different knife used on Devin.
Yeah. That's all I can think of.
Hey, I think we did a pretty good job covering this case here and covering the basics of it, folks, for the Wrecking Crew. If you guys want to go ahead and start looking into this case, like I told you, we're going to be doing a deeper dive. Allie's already been doing some looking into this. She's got a couple things that she's kind of trying to line up. Hopefully they'll come through like she's hoping. And we'll go ahead and we'll do another deeper dive into this and look at some of the aspects of it a little more closely. But we thought we'd get the Wrecking Crew all on board first and get everybody, aware of this case and looking at it and being aware of it before we start going and trying to do a more technical or deeper, analytical, or to try to focus in on certain, certain aspects, in very closely and that sort of thing. Before we get there, we wanted to give people a more general outlook of it. So that's what we were trying to do here today.
Yeah, so she's been on death row. I don't even think we said this.
Oh, yes.
Like we skipped a bunch of the really basics.
I did mention she's on death row. And
she's been on death row for 20-something years. I don't know how long. And so she doesn't have an execution date yet. She could at any moment have an execution date, as far as I understand. So this is sort of, I've always been interested in it since it happened, back when I lived there and it actually happened. I've followed it here and there, but I've never actually read into all of the documents and things like that, because I just recently got them. But I think, Erekose and I have a mutual friend who asked me a while back to reach out to Zellner with her and some others and ask if she would take a look at this case and see if there's anything she can do, because, we're trying to save her life if she is innocent. A real investigation being done could let us know if she is. I think that's what this case needs.
I think it does too. I mean, I'm not satisfied with what went down on the prosecutions. In fact, one of the shows I was watching, one of the crime shows about this case that they were investigating it again, they were at one point where they're like, yeah, we're week 3 in our investigation, and we've already spent more time investigating this than the original investigators did.
Right. They did. And that, if anybody wants to watch that show's called, what is it called?
It was
The Wrong Man.
Women,
it's called. It's on
Wrong Man.
YouTube.
Yeah, it's called The Wrong Man. So it was a good one. So I'd suggest it. You just look it up, folks. There's an unsolved mysteries about this. There's I think 3 different segments on the Lisa Gibbons show where they brought on, Darren and Darlie's mom and Darlie's sister, I think it is, and all these people, and then they even had one of the jurors on that believed that she was guilty, one a court observer that had been there at the trial, and some other stuff. So the Lisa Gibbons show was actually, considering it's the Lisa Gibbons show, was actually kind of interesting just because of the people that they got in for it, in my opinion. So anyways, interesting stuff, folks, for those of you who have interest in this sort of stuff, and generally if you're tuned into my channel, you do. So let's take a look into this case and see what we can turn up, because like I said, I hate to see anybody on death row for circumstantial case. Those of you who know, I follow the Scott Davis case, and you guys know I recently announced that there will be oral arguments for the Scott Davis case coming up in May with the 11th Circuit Court. So that is an exciting moment. I'm going to get to see, the state's lawyers and, Scott's lawyer argue this in a court with oral arguments, and I'm excited for that. I hope a lot of people are. We're going to be looking to get into other things here. Something that Travis was talking about the last week and a half, is that we're going to eventually hit a lull here with the Stephen Avery stuff and everything. And so we're going to be trying to go and bring awareness to other cases as well. Not everybody's as lucky as Stephen Avery to have had a blockbuster documentary made about their case. So we're going to do our best. But we're going to do our best out here to try to create the awareness, because this is what we're passionate about, right? Could be me, could be you. So with that, I'll go ahead and let's cut to Stacy. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And
Stacy.
And tell you what, folks, this is my favorite one from Stacy right now. And you guys know I love all the ones that refer to Cratch's as legal stain. I mean, those are all still my favorites too. But this one here, it's the second to last one he made. But I'm just digging this one a lot. Totally digging this one. So here it comes. It was actually song 3 in his set last night.
So let's keep talking about Avery. Yeah, let's keep talking till he's set free. Oh, you just listen, I think you'll see why it matters. Really matters.
It was great to have Allie here, by the way. Thank you, Allie, for being here.
Put aside the documentary, the state's version ludicrousy. Oh, all their claims so blatantly get torn to tatters. I think that matters. I bet you heard about her last sweat, but maybe you ain't heard this yet. 19 more times the DNA that was left anywhere else that day. I think that matters. I really do. I think it matters. An ex-boyfriend with a day planner page, and yet they did not investigate. And who knows why, and who can say why he was signed into the crime scene that day. I think that matters. I really do. I think it matters. About the barrel that once was seized, but then returned to the Averys. The bones were found the next day, but not one photograph exists of where they lay. I think that matters. I really do. I think it matters. I could go on listing things off. 80 more things.
Travis, we're going to go ahead and cover that this weekend as well, buddy. Just return a phone call for once, would you, bud?
To every freedom rings, I said it matters. It really, I know it matters. It could be you, I think it matters. It could be me, I know it matters. Work with Casey, it matters.
It matters.
I said it matters. It really matters.
I think this is still one of my main favorites for Stacy, though. I remember when he made this one, when he put this one out.
2 years since MAM, now here I go again. To confine innocent men in a 10 by 10. Fates, oh, now the men deserve. But fear breeds silence in men to walk. You don't say nothing cause you know you're cops. But someone knows something, yet everyone plays ball.
Good night, Linda.
I say we round them all up. Let's brain fingerprint them all. Everything about the case was suspicious. I hope the biting teeth of justice is so vicious. For those who bred the lie, they temporarily preserve. From time into time goes to Brendan's so-called confession, to the fact that Peterson was out of town when she went missing. How can we forget Andy, Sam, William, Henry Call? I say we round them all up. Let's brain fingerprint them all. So much planted evidence now anyone can see. The magic bullet and blood in the RAB. And even evidence that defies gravity. The key that turned up 7 searches later with none of her DNA at all. Let's brain fingerprint them all. I say we round them all up. Let's brain fingerprint them all.
Good night, Linda.
Who's pulling strings? I want to know that top rank. For those who pay attention, all the unbanked stank. And those that are smiling, they always knew who would take the fall. I say we round them all up. Let's brain fingerprint them all. I say we round them all up. Let's brain fingerprint them all.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing us to try to bring some more awareness to Darlie Routier's case. You know, like I said, not sure where I stand yet, but I'm definitely looking at this one, considering this one, thinking about this one. Certainly am not convinced of what the prosecution says happened. So anyways, we'll continue to look into this one as we move on. Thank you for being here. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. And thank you for being here, Allie.
Thanks, Erekose.